So how do we increase? So how do we increase the win rate of our trades? Well, I'm going to go through a simple trick that definitely saved me a lot of times and still does to this day. And it's, spoiler alert, it's to do with the 5 minute, and it's waiting for that 5 minute candle close. So if you already do this, get out, go. But no, if you already do this, you might learn something as well from this video. You never know. But to those who don't, and those who use the 1 minute for entries and keep getting themselves caught out, it's always worth trying a 5 minute and wait for the candle close. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we see our two zones on the chart here. Now we are trading US 30. That is a completely different strategy to how I trade silver and gold. However, we are simply looking for 5 minute reactions when it comes to these levels. So we have our levels drawn out, and basically you want to start waiting for 5 minute reaction candles, because these candles will save you so many times. So here we have on the screen our two zones that we have grabbed from the 30 minute. Now I do trade US 30 and the NASDAQ a little bit differently to how we trade silver and gold. For this video, the sole purpose is focusing on 5 minute candles and how we can use them to our advantage. So without further ado, let's jump into the trade. Let's jump into the backtesting session. So if we play price along here, we're simply waiting for a 5 minute reaction. Now, when we get a huge bullish, in this case, candle tap into the zone, we ideally want to wait for 2 candles to close in the opposite direction, as we have on the screen right here. So you see this, and yes, it hasn't engulfed this one. However, let's say, for example, price does engulf with one candle like this, your entry would have to be around up here, and your targets would be up here. Yes, that is a 1 to 1.7. However, you've got to deem, is it really worth it getting into a trade like that with stops that big? Me personally, if my stops have to be this big, yes, I will take a 1 to 1 whenever, but if the stops have to be this big, then ideally I don't really want to be in the trade because my entry isn't ideal for me. So what we do, we've adapted the strategy and we just change it that, okay, look, well, if we do get this big bullish in this scenario, tap into the zone, and we do get 2 bearish candles closing following it, which, keep in mind, this is 10 minutes worth of price action. So we've had the zone and we stuck for 10 minutes. We've stuck in a bearish market. Where do we keep our stop losses? Well, we can have it, like I say, above the bodies, above the wicks, and above the zones. There is a lot of support here, or in this case resistance, so therefore it's always worth just having it a little bit higher, just if price does come back, and especially count for spreads as well. It's always something to be aware of. Spreads, especially if you're trading prop firms, they can be an absolute killer and absolutely just wick you out. Where would your stop losses be? Again, in this scenario, it doesn't really matter because we're trading the US 30 strategy, so our zones would already be pre-marked out. But the idea is I want you to get the 2 bearish candle closes if the candle going into the zone is a huge bullish one like this. It would be the exact same if we were in a bullish scenario and we get a huge bearish candle wick into the zone, and then we then create 2 little bullish candles to take us to the upside. That's what I would look for. The first candle alone would not be enough for me to be like, right, okay, let's get in, let's do it because we've had a reaction. I ideally want to see 2 candles close from this level in the opposite direction. In this example, they are closing bearish, but obviously in a reverse scenario, then we would look for 2 candles that have closed bullish. So in this scenario with the 5 minute, this is what I'd be looking for. And then, not that it matters, but let's just play price along here. And then we can come back to the bottom of our zone. So it's important that you understand the 5 minute candle closes. Now, if you weren't happy with that and you wanted to simply wait for a bullish engulfing candle to simply engulf the previous one here, in this scenario, you did get basically another perfect entry. Price tapped back in. It didn't give you your engulfing here, but it definitely did on the second candle close, which worked out to be about the same entry as we got before. And then price just sunk down to our take profit targets. Stops were in the right place. Again, we counter for how much resistance that we're dealing with. It's not going to be often you get a scenario like this, but it's always worth being aware of. And this again is where experience will come into the market, because new people will just be like, oh well, I can have a smaller stop loss here, and have it round about here, above the bodies, above the wicks, above the zone. But the realistic thing is we have a lot of resistance here that we can play off. So it's always worth just knowing these things. And again, it's just going to happen with experience. So jumping into another example then, we have our zones marked out. Again, how we always trade US 30. This is how we do it. We draw the highs and lows of the previous US session zone. If you want to know a little more, there is a Discord below. Feel free to join it. If it doesn't take your fancy, then there's nothing stopping you from leaving. But yeah, and again, any questions that you may have, please let me know, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So let's jump to the 5 minute then, because we have our zones. So we're simply going to play price on here and see what sort of reactions we get. Now we get a break below the zone. Do we get a retest in? Kill yourself. Jumping on to a second example then, we can see we have our zones marked out. And if you don't know how the zones work, it's in the Discord. Feel free to let me know any questions in the Discord as well. It's all free, and I'll respond to you as soon as possible. However, we have our zones marked out for US 30. Again, if you want to learn how to trade it, it is in the Discord, basically my whole game plan about that. So that is what that is. So we have our zones and we're simply waiting for price to tap in US session from these zones. So we're waiting for a tap in and a bearish engulfing candle. Notice how the candles didn't really close in a bearish pattern. We got this big candle wick in, this big body close as well, and we're just waiting for that bearish candle. Like in the example before, if the candle closed somewhere down here, and again it's a fine line and it's always going to come down to experience in the market. Like I say, you could have seen this and be like, oh well, that was like the example he showed in previously, I'm going to get in. However, you can see it wasn't really a bearish close. This would have been a bullish candle. And then we got another tap in the zone. So we really want to see an engulfing candle from this zone that engulfs the previous candles. Our attention has now gone from this candle to these two right here. If we do engulf these, then it's a great way just to get into the trade. So if we play price on a little bit there, we can see we've absolutely engulfed everything. And it's simply a case of waiting for that 5 minute engulfing. If you do get caught out and maybe set a 3 minute time frame, that's on you. That's just you being greedy. Just wait for a 5 minute bullish or bearish candle close and make sure it's an engulfing candle. Or if it's not an engulfing candle, wait for two opposite candle closes in the opposite direction of what you're trading. For example, in this one, we would wait for two bearish candles. They didn't have to engulf this, but like I say, this candle here was bullish. So we eventually got our 5 minute engulfing candle. So therefore we are in the trade, and it's all about waiting for the 5-minute candle close. This is how you're going to increase your win rate. Don't get greedy and get in at 4 minutes. Don't get greedy and get in at 3 minutes. Get in at 5 minutes. I'm not talking 4 minutes 30 because you think the candle's going to close bullish. There's many a times where you're going to be like, oh, well, there's only 20 seconds left. This candle is going to close like this. And then a lot of the time you'll see price just come down and be like, why didn't I wait for it? And then it spirals again. So therefore, there you go. Now, in terms of searching for a take profit target, just for the sake of the video, you'd simply look at previous US sessions lows or potential highs, as we do in our previous video. So this is going to be, in this scenario, when you have stops like this, it's always worth just marking out a couple zones, because you don't want to be aiming for the moon. And if I told you to target all the way down here, I would argue that's aiming for the moon. So just, be reasonable with your targets, and understand that it's not always best if you do shoot for the moon. So without further ado, we have a take profit target here. Again, a US high from the past, and then we're just going to play price along here. And we can see it absolutely melts down and actually comes down to the previous zone beforehand. And that's that basically. Just wait for the 5-minute candle close. Again, I can do more videos on this, but the general consensus is just wait for the 5-minute close. Not 4 minutes 30, not 4 minutes 50, 5 minutes. Just wait for it to close. Make sure it's engulfing. If it's not engulfing, I needed to come out. Fuck. Oh. Oh. The only excuse would be is waiting for them 2 candle closes in the opposite direction, as I was keep mentioning. But that about wraps it up. Any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.